people don't bury a car, especially a Ferrari Dino, without a really good reason. And almost always, that reason is the same. Someone is trying to hide a secret.
What is your dream car? Rolls-Royce? Ferrari? Whatever your dream car is, you probably do not own it presently because it's shockingly expensive. But do you want to know what's more shocking than that? Some of your dream cars have been abandoned by their owners. From an abandoned Bugatti to a Rolls-Royce, these are seriously amazing machines. Join us as we show you the 20 most incredible abandoned cars that actually exist. Number 20, Bugatti Veyron. Imagine finding your dream car abandoned to rot away somewhere. You'll probably feel angry at the owner and wish it was yours. Well, lovers of Bugatti Veyron should brace up, as their favorite is left alone without love, care, and attention. This Bugatti Veyron was left somewhere in Russia to waste away, and at first, no one could say who the owner was. On the car is the sticker that reads Autoleman, which is a very successful dealership in the area where the abandoned car was discovered. But how did the Bugatti end up forgotten by its owner? What we know is that the Bugatti was involved in an accident back in 2013 when it was rear-ended by an Aston Martin. And instead of repairing the Bugatti, the owner decided to ditch it. It seems the owner is a very rich human and a wasteful one, because there's just no reason anyone should treat the Bugatti Veyron with so much disrespect. Don't you agree? Number 19, Mercedes 300 SL. One thing about Cuba is it provides a glimpse into the history of motoring. You'll still find classic cars from the 1960s on the road today, and one such beautiful find was achieved by a photographer, Piotr Degler, who took a trip to Cuba in December 2014. When Degler got to Cuba, he heard rumors about a rare Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing abandoned somewhere on the island. But even though almost everyone knows about the abandoned car, no one knew where it was parked. Degler stayed for 1 month and roamed the streets of Cuba looking for this beauty. After searching everywhere, Degler eventually stumbled on the carcass of a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL being sheltered by a banana tree. That find brought great joy to Degler that he won't stop taking pictures of the Mercedes even into the night. The only thing is Degler won't tell us the exact location of this car except that it's on the island of Cuba. Well, if he did, most of us would have relocated to Cuba by now. Number 18, Ferrari F40. Many people that have traveled to Iraq have taken pictures of a Ferrari F40, but none of them added the exact location where this beauty was discovered. Since then, a YouTuber named Ratarosa began a mission to find the car. You see, this Ferrari is not just any Ferrari. It belonged to former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein's infamous son, Uday Hussein. Uday is known for his extravagant lifestyle and his love for exotic cars before he died in the U.S. invasion of 2003, and one of his fleet of cars was the Ferrari F40. Ratarosa put a bounty on the Italian supercar with hopes to find it and transport it to the United Kingdom for a good repair. Although the task seemed impossible, social media did a great job of providing leads to the location of the car. Chris Smith, popularly known as Big Smith from the car refurbishment company Gas Monkey Garage, had already found the car at 2016 when he took a trip to Iraq. He then helped to identify the location's surroundings and tracked it down to the city of Erbil, the northern capital of Iraqi Kurdistan. The car was found covered in dust and missing some essential parts that won't make it start. But that was not the problem. Ratarosa was still determined to buy it until the current owner stated a selling price of $1,150,000. After Ratarosa made his calculation on the cost of repair and transportation, he had to abandon his initial plan. The car was left in its bad state but was eventually moved to a safer garage. Number 17, Ford Mustang. If you know anything about the 1968 Ford Mustang, you'd probably wonder why it's in the rough state that it is. What we know is the current owner of this car found a tree growing through the front part of the body. You may think all they needed to do was remove the tree, but the Mustang didn't have any engine or transmission in it, and even the cabin was nothing to write home about. In addition, the Mustang has been invaded by rust. Any surprises? The car has been there for a very long time, and given its condition, saving the Mustang will be a big challenge. The car was originally a J-code Mustang, which means it was born with a 302 small block V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor. In 1968, this engine developed 230 horsepower, while its 2-barrel sibling, which was installed on F-code Mustangs, was rated at 210 horsepower. In case you are still wondering what's so special about this car, the same type that was driven by Steve McQueen in the legendary crime flick Bullitt was sold to a bid of $3.4 million, making it the most expensive Mustang ever sold. Number 16, Jaguar XJ220. Jaguar chief designer Jim Randall had a dream, and through it, the XJ220 was born. It became one of Jaguar's most unexpectedly successful models in its proud and rich history. Such high esteem is enough for the owner to shower the Jaguar with love and care. But the owner of this Jaguar decided to abandon it somewhere in the Qatari desert. The details of how the car got there are a bit sketchy, but here's what we know. It seems the car was originally sold by a Jaguar dealer in Dubai, after which a photographer that goes by the name Mick Bramley, who works on 220s, once spotted the Jaguar in Beirut when it was in its happier days, shiny and handsome. Mick kept photographs of the cars he had worked on for record purposes, but unfortunately, he would be the same person to see the same car in its dusty and wrecked state. It's enough to ruin someone's day. Number 15, Koenigsegg Trevita. This find is so touching that it can make you cry because only 3 Koenigsegg Trevitas were ever made, and one of them was found sitting dusty in a Swiss garage for months. Well, let's appreciate this owner because at least he parked this beauty in a garage, but still we can't be too grateful because the Koenigsegg Trevita was not made to be abandoned in a garage. The supercar is worth $2 million and it is very fast. Due to its limited quantity produced, it is very rare in Zurich, which has a selection of incredible cars like Porsche and Maserati all over town. This makes us think that the owner of this Koenigsegg Trevita is excessively rich, as he didn't mind leaving the rare supercar in the garage. In the garage, the parking ticket is said to be well over 1,000 Swiss franc, and as if that was not enough, the owner didn't take his time to park it well between the lines. Fortunately, the car seems to be in perfectly fine condition, so we doubt it's broken down. When the car was checked, there was an accumulation of fingerprints on the car, and it seems a lot of passing gearheads haven't been able to keep their hands off the car. Number 14, the Veyron collection. We've been talking about single car finds, but this one is a whole collection, and this one is massive. The Roger Veyron collection has so many classics sitting under an open shed in France, but they were there so long that many of them became just bare husks. The auction house Art Coutial revealed a 59-car hoard in the collection. When the barn was discovered, the 1961 Ferrari 250 GT SWB California Spider and 1956 Maserati A6G 2000 Grand Sport Berlinetta Frua were the stars, with a few surprises among the bunch. There were also several modern Ferraris and a thoroughly beat 1982 308 GTSI without headlights and portions of the paint gone. And oh, I forgot to mention a 1988 Mondial Cabriolet that looks good on the outside but needs a mechanical overhaul with an attractive gray 1978 400 GT and others. What would be your first reaction if you found this collection? Number 13, 1957, Plymouth Belvedere. The story of this car will make you laugh and at the same time get you angry. It all started in the late 1950s when a town called Tulsa in Oklahoma decided to hold a contest to celebrate the state's 50th anniversary. The concept is simple, but the reward is not reasonable enough. All the contestants needed to do was submit an entry and guess Tulsa's population in 2007. The winner would then receive a brand new 1957 Plymouth Belvedere, which was an expensive car at the time. The question is, were they thinking at all? 50 years is a long time, and the value of the car would have reduced the way it eventually did. The car would go for around $30,000 presently, but then the residents of Tulsa saw it as a perfect idea, and they all agreed to it. But they had a single problem: where to keep the vehicle safe for 50 years. Take a second to guess where it was kept. Time's up. You probably didn't guess right, but I'll help. It was kept under the waters. Before you blame them for their decisions, the nation was then in the midst of the Cold War and was particularly concerned about the security of lives and properties, just in case of a global nuclear conflict. 50 years later, everyone was now looking at the Plymouth Belvedere dug out from the waters. As you must have guessed, the car was nothing like it used to be. It has been eroded into a completely rusted-out shell of its former self. That was crazy, but you're definitely not prepared for the next part. The winner of the contest had been dead long before he was declared the winner. So what did they do? The car went to his 100-year-old sister, who obviously did not need a huge pile of scrap metal. The car was damaged beyond repair, and when the owner tried to donate the vehicle to museums, one of them replied, "We are not America's garage." Ouch! That was harsh. Number 12, Dodge Charger Daytona. Somewhere in Wisconsin, a Dodge Charger Daytona was found in a state of neglect. This vehicle had succumbed to the passage of time, with ravages of rust taking their toll on the once majestic vehicle. Surprisingly, its market value remained greatly unaffected. That is because of its scarcity and historical significance. Only 505 units of this car were produced, and this discovered, deteriorating one carries a staggering market value of $180,000. The Dodge Charger Daytona was a high-performance vehicle created for NASCAR's aerodynamic homologation requirements. Its unique design featured a towering rear wing and a sloping nose cone, providing unparalleled aerodynamic efficiency on the racetrack. Today, this iconic car stands as a symbol of automotive engineering and rarity. Only 2 people have owned the car, and the majority of its components are left in original condition. For over 3 decades, this car was left untouched, which makes anyone wonder why the owner abandoned it. The good thing is that it was found in good condition, and it only needs slight modifications to its original paint job to retain the essence of its heyday. Number 11, Toyota Supra GT 500. Would you believe that this car was once a race car used in a competition? It was a successful car that finished 14th overall in its final season and also on the podium at Fuji Speedway. Remarkable, right? But for those who do not know the 90s JDM touring cars, this is the 1999 Toyota Supra that was driven by Yuji Tachikawa and Hironori Takeuchi. No jokes, it was the actual car that raced and sat not so pretty with its mechanical bits intact apart from the transmission. It raced in the All Japan Grand Touring Car Championship, which, if you're a bit older, may only ring a bell when we refer to it as the Zen Nihon GT Senshuken, or Super GT if you're a little younger. Either way, it's the top flight of Japanese touring cars, and in the 90s it was properly epic. But how did this beautiful oldie end up abandoned? After the 1999 season, there was a sponsorship change within the race team, so the main sponsor wanted to get rid of the car. Normally, it should be a car that many would rush to possess, but unfortunately no one wanted it. That was because it was too expensive, and on top of that, it was too complex to run. Now, it lives at a shop where the owners who acquired it for free are using it as an eye-catching memento outside the office. It's sitting in the same spot it has been for over 15 years with its tires deflated and paint faded and cracked. Number 10. The Stolen Ferrari. As a kid, if you didn't dig around your yard, you should relive your childhood. These kids were digging in their yard when they came across some metal. They must have thought it was something small until the digging kept revealing more than they could handle. They needed the adults' intervention, and when they got it, they discovered it was not just any metal, but a valuable one, a buried Ferrari. It was a 1974 Ferrari Dino 246 GTS buried just a few feet underneath the dirt in their yard. The family had just moved to the house, so they never knew that something that valuable was in their yard. Immediately, the family called the authorities, who unearthed the rare car. After exhuming the Italian sports car, it was obvious that someone had planned on returning to retrieve the vehicle at some point in time. It was carefully buried, just that the windows were not fully closed, causing a lot of interior damage. The authorities were left with work to do. They had to find who buried the Ferrari and why. They called the farmer's insurance, and because of the VN, they were able to trace the last owner. After the investigation, it turns out that the owner of the car had actually hired thieves to steal his Ferrari and dump it in the ocean so he could claim the insurance on it. But the thieves had other plans. They buried the Ferrari instead, intending to return to pick it up for themselves. It is not clear what happened to the owner and the thieves, but we do know that no one returned to claim the car. The Ferrari was eventually auctioned and purchased by a young mechanic. Number 9, Frankenstein Buick Hearse. Like the other vehicles we have mentioned, this car was also found abandoned, and when you look at it, you just can't see any reason for it to be on this list. That's because you do not know anything about Frankenstein Buick Hearse. This car has its story, although it's a bit sketchy. This car was originally built in Michigan as a 1947 Buick Roadmaster estate wagon. It was then shipped overseas, where it was converted into a hearse. The conversion replaced the rear passenger area with a long, ornate-looking casket-holding cargo section, while the exterior was revamped with several broad window sections, providing onlookers with copious opportunities to observe the interior. It's not clear how long the Buick was in service, but what's obvious is that it was eventually left to rot in a field. What was once a beauty took on a whole new, beastie look. It most definitely turned heads in its heyday, but what is left of it now is just a pale, rusty metal. Number 8, DeLorean DMC12. This is one famous car that got its fame in the 1989 classic starring Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly. Over 30 years later, 2 men found the same car sitting in a barn near Lake Michigan in Wisconsin. Despite remaining inactive for more than 3 decades, the DeLorean DMC12 was in its original condition. The odometer showed the classic motor had clocked between 30,000 and 40,000 miles before it was parked there in 1986. The 2 men opened the car with a pair of pliers as its door handle was broken. The 2 spent countless hours restoring the car to its former glory and plan on using it again when it is finished. It is not clear how long it would take to make the car perfect, but it's definitely going to be worth it after it is done, considering the minimal damage that time had done to it. Number 7, Bentley Vandenplaz. Bentley made some really amazing and rare vehicles. One of them is the Bentley Vandenplaz, made using old stock parts and had their bodywork done by top-of-the-range coach builders Vandenplaz. This unique car was bought by Charles Blackham, a war hero who bombed Adolf Hitler's Eagle's Nest. Blackham, who was a Lancaster bomber pilot in the RAF, bought the 1936 Bentley Vandenplaz 7 years after the war and drove it for 36 years before his advancing years forced him to take it off-road. The car then spent 30 years rusting away in a lockup in Blackham's home in Stockport, Greater Manchester, until he died at the age of 96. After his death, the car was unearthed and sold as part of Blackham's estate. Despite being covered in rust and its leather seats ripped, the rare motor is still expected to sell for £200,000. Number 6, the Chateau Car Graveyard. Just as you find different dead bodies in a graveyard, there are different dead cars in this car graveyard. The graveyard, located in the middle of a small forest near Châtillon, a little village in southern Belgium, is a graveyard of abandoned and beautiful rusty cars. And these cars once belonged to U.S. soldiers who were stationed in this region. Maybe they were paid so much to be able to acquire these beauties in the middle of the war because each car was very expensive at the time of purchase. But the baffling thing is, why did they leave those cars there? After the end of World War II, all military troops were sent back to the U.S., but the cost of having all those cars shipped was way too expensive. The officers then had no choice but to abandon their new cars in Belgium. They drove the cars up a hill one after the other and parked them there. When they got back home, some of the soldiers tried to retrieve their cars, taking full responsibility for the cost of shipping, but in the end, not a single cat was retrieved. Over time, corrosion and decay have worn down the vehicles, and what little remained was stolen by the locals and car collectors. Now, it's time for today's subscriber's pick. If you're a fan of Batman movies, then this vehicle is probably reminding you of Batman Forever. But why is it seated in a forest, right? There are speculations concerning this vehicle, and of them is that the car is the original prop for the movie, while some people believe it is a replica built by a Batman fan. Let's forget about what others think. What are your thoughts on this vehicle? Let us know in the comment section below. Number 5, Aston Martin DB5. Most people who watched Goldfinger must have fallen in love with the Aston Martin DB5 and also left shaken when they heard it was stolen. The classic car was driven by Sean Connery in the 1964 film and it became the talk of the town only for it to be stolen in a heist in Florida almost a quarter of a century ago. It disappeared from an aircraft hangar owned by car collector and businessman Anthony Pugliese at Boca Raton Airport in Florida on June 1997. The vehicle was said to be lifted out by its axles before being carried away in a cargo plane, a heist that no doubt shocked the living daylights out of the facility's security team. Since then, there have been mysteries surrounding the whereabouts of the car. On a fateful day, investigators received a tip-off that it had been seen in the Middle East, being used as a private vehicle. According to the investigation, the serial number matches that of the original car. What we know is that the car was found in the Middle East, but the investigators didn't mention the specific location. It is now estimated to be worth about $25 million. Number 4. BMW 328. This BMW 328 is also a unique model that has at a time raced in completions, making history with the likes of Le Mans, Donington Park, and the legendary Mille Miglia. It is surprising to know that this iconic car was abandoned. Two friends and business partners, Derek Freshour and Heath Rodney, were more accustomed to trading in Trans Ams and other project muscle cars. But on a good day, when they searched a local farmer's barn in Villisca, Iowa, they were not prepared for the vehicle that they saw covered in farm equipment and hay. The local farmer held onto one of the rarest BMWs ever built, a factory lightweight BMW 328. The two friends took the car with plans to restore it to its open-top racing body. Number 3. Lotus Esprit. This is also another car that was made popular by a movie. The story of this find started in 1989 when a couple from Long Island paid $100 for an unclaimed storage unit on offer at a blind auction. Neither the seller nor the new owners had a clue what was inside, yet hidden beneath some old blankets was a Lotus Esprit used in the 1977 Bond flick. In the movie, the sports car is nicknamed Wet Nelly because it famously transforms from a sporty two-seater into a missile-firing submarine capable of taking out helicopters above the surface. This is one of the reasons why everyone that has seen the movie cannot get it out of their heads. It was one of the only 8 used in the movie, but even with the fame, the couple didn't know about the car. They had never seen a Bond flick. But after the couple learned of the car's significance, they immediately got it restored and listed it with Sotheby's. In 2013, a secret buyer, later identified, got the car for $997,000. Guess the secret buyer, Elon Musk. After it was known that Musk had acquired the Lotus Esprit, he said in an interview that he was disappointed to learn that the vehicle can't actually transform, but trust Elon Musk to always make plans. He planned to upgrade the car with a Tesla electric powertrain and try to make it transform for real. Has he done that yet? Number 2. Lamborghini Miura P400S. To fully understand how this car was abandoned, let's throw back to when the owner acquired it. Aristotle Onassis, a famous billionaire who came into the spotlight after he married Jacqueline, President John F. Kennedy's widow. In the 1970s, Aristotle financed the construction of Fifth Avenue's Olympic Tower and enjoyed the finest Greek music of the time. One of his favorite singers was Stamatis Kokotas, considered the Greek Elvis. Onassis admired his work so much that he bought Kokotas a 1969 Lamborghini Miura S. Kokotas fancied himself a race car driver. He often pushed his vehicles to their limits, and in addition to his brown 1969 Lamborghini Miura S, he also sped around in a 2002 BMW. The Lamborghini's engine failed in 1972 after doing 52,188 miles. While the car repairer took the engine out for repair, Kokotas abandoned the car in the hotel garage. And because he already lost interest in the car, he refused to pay Lamborghini for the repair. Therefore, the Lamborghini was left to rot in a Hilton hotel garage in Athens for nearly 30 years. However, in 2003, the Miura S's wheels began turning again, thanks to the Olympic Games. When the hotel underwent renovations to prepare for the 2004 Summer Olympics in Athens, the Lambo was moved to a storage facility. Then, in 2012, the abandoned Miura S went up for auction with a new engine, and the winning bid was $483,210. Number 1. Rolls-Royce Phantom. This special edition Rolls-Royce was found wasting away on a railway sidewalk, and nobody knows why. No explanations or justifications, just speculations that the Rolls-Royce was owned by a Russian and that he probably left it out to dry. There's also a rumor that the Rolls was once owned by a celebrity from Las Vegas before he sold it to a Russian buyer. I am sure we all know that the car was abandoned, but the question that hasn't been answered is, why? Why would a Rolls-Royce Phantom that has been fully modded with an exclusive Centurion body kit with a value of over $400,000 be abandoned for no reason? Maybe the Rolls developed a fault, and the owner thought it was better to park it where it would collect snow and count chopped wood. What's your thought? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.